I love it.
I love my little man.
Hi. Sorry, Kevo plays a lovely intro for us as well, and we were unaware that it was so amazing and wonderful.
I was not prepared.
Ready?
Oh my God. And now we're in cute little wreaths. This is full force. Wow. Okay. I hope I'm still Nico, and you can find me at Nico Action, NICOACTION.
I'm Tori. You can find me on Instagram at smtori and on Twitter at Tori_Sheehan. And we are the host today for a new Man in Red.
Yeah, this is the Billy Club, Marvel's one and only Daredevils podcast. I'm just so thrown by the holiday stuff. It was so great. I loved it so much. Oh, that was so terrific. This is the Billy Club, your one-stop podcast for all of the adventures of Marvel's Crimson Crusader and evidently his holiday adventures.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorites. I covered this for X's for Podcast. That show's been going on for so long. They have so many episodes. You should really check them out. They cover so much. But I love so much about what this is because it's not your classic Christmas tale. Kevo and I once had a long discussion about how there are like 4 basic themes for Christmas episodes of television shows. I think when you get into Christmas issues for comics, it can kind of be the same thing. There's the idea of like the gift of the Magi. There's the idea of, and then a Christmas miracle or like a Scroogifying or the Grinch or things like that. And this is not that.
No. And I really absolutely love it because I'm doing, like you mentioned, X's for Podcast. We do a holiday special every year. This year, we're kind of doing a best of because like Tori said, we've done so many holiday episodes over the years. This year, we're doing a best of. I'm very excited about it. I'm recording something new for it where I'm looking at every special issue ever called The Punisher Holiday Something. He's had one-shots in the bigger Marvel holiday tales, but specifically, the Punisher had 3 one-shots, Punisher Holiday Special 1 through 3, and then he's had 4 Punisher holiday one-shots over the last 20 years. I'm just so fascinated why Marvel thought this was such a good idea.
Yeah, who is he, the Doctor?
Well, that's the thing. They all fall into one of 2 categories. Really, because like you said, there's a couple of categories for Christmas. There's Punisher stories where some of the decorations are Christmas, like, oh, he's claiming that the bad weather is because it's snowing because it's right around Christmas, but it could also just be a hurricane in Miami and it wouldn't change the story.
Right.
So there's a lot of like you just kind of slot in the holidays.
Yeah, little Die Hard, little Iron Man 3.
And then the other story is you put the Punisher in a Santa suit. That's it. That's the only change. It's just Punisher in a Santa suit. I went into this issue having just done all of this rereading for holiday stuff and actually re-editing all of the Classic X segments so that they'd be cleaner and tighter. I went into this being like, oh, great. I'm in for another holiday story that's not holiday at all. And you know what? It's actually kind of not that holidaysy, but what it has is Winter's Tale.
Yes.
It's got so much Winter's Tale about it. And like a good Winter's Tale has fear of cold, isolation via the elements, the idea of heat saves us, the idea that if we stick together, we can survive. This is a Winter's Tale, and I love it.
Yeah. And you don't need your daughter trying to become her mother who's a statue. You don't need that.
And that's the thing about this story that also makes it so interesting is that Daredevil #7 from the Mark Waid run. Now, this is from volume 3.
Yeah, we didn't introduce this for 5 minutes in.
Oh, no, but this is such a great issue. It speaks for itself, and we'll have a really clear thumbnail. We have Daredevil #7 by the incredible team of Mark Waid and Paulo Rivera, just one of the best ever writer and penciler teams to ever be on Daredevil. Of course, Joe Rivera, his father, doing inks. It's such an amazing team up to have those two together. Javier Rodriguez does beautiful colors and would, of course, go on to be one of the most breathtaking artists at Marvel, doing full art on several titles that we cover regularly over on X for Podcast. Joe Caramagna with his brilliant letters courtesy of Virtual Calligraphy. So terrific. This issue came out in 2011, and it is to this day one of those like the Badlands level of perfect one and dones for Daredevil.
It's so gorgeous. And it starts with that cover, the black and the white, the snow, the simple snow angel, little red guy down there. Like, we complain a lot in the early issues about how Daredevil is so small in comparison to other things on his cover. But in this, it's so perfect. There's just a little smiley dude down there, and he's having a good time and gets the big bad world. And I love it. I love everything about it.
And I think the thing that makes the story so important to me is that I really love that he's not fighting a bad guy here. There's no enemy. It's not Bullseye gained the power of perfect accuracy at Christmas. It is Daredevil against an opponent, which is winter and fear. Like, the bad guy here is kind of fear itself because he's trying to hold it together for these children. Now, the setup for this issue is Matt Murdock is doing his annual volunteer work, taking children away for a weekend in the winter, just children that face problems in their life. And he's just doing what he can to make their
life
better.
And are also blind.
Yes. And the main thing about this story that becomes so powerful is it's not that Daredevil is fighting anyone to save the city. The stakes here are several individual children. And more than anything, it's not that Matt can't just save these kids on his own as Daredevil without really, having a problem. It's that Matt is in a position where the psychological scarring these children could incur is an equal threat. He's not just trying to save their lives. He's trying to save their sense of mental safety when these are kids that are already in a position of uncertainty in their regular lives.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's also a little bit of self-preservation concerns for Matt. We have a lot of conversations about how Matt gets very knocked down before he gets back up. But this is one of those where as the pages keep going and as it keeps not turning around, you really start to feel Matt being like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is how I go out. Maybe the kids will be able to save themselves, but maybe this is how I go down. And it's hard to feel that in your usual man without fear, like that he's just so beaten down from the issues that come before this, where he's been trying to keep himself upright. He's been trying to keep himself light and fluffy and happy and not the old Matt, but it's under there. And when everything is just the cold and the dark and the fear, it'll all come back out. And that's very, very interesting to read when you think that you're going to open up an issue that's just like fluffy, happy Christmas times.
Or at least you'll have like a bad guy you can fight. Like, there's so much about this issue that's so disarming. And one of the things that's so perfect about it is the quality of Mark Waid's page economy. Mark Waid and Paulo Rivera really use every panel to its most efficacious. This sense of cutting between stories and media res storytelling can be really tricky. We start on the bus, then we backtrack, and he's talking to Foggy and he's dealing with the fallout from last issue. Then we're back on the bus. It's so much back and forth, but it's all of the places where Mark Waid is able to cleverly show without overdoing it. It's the effectiveness of showing the limp. It's the effectiveness of having the kids dragging Daredevil. There are so many key elements that are a storyteller trusting his team. I feel like Mark Waid said, here's a couple of the biggest emotional moments. I would love to be the one to do them, but there aren't words. Show it. Kevo, this amazing blocking you've done where we can see the creative team the whole time is just so beautiful, because I really feel this creative team deserves that sort of credit for what is easily one of the most beautiful issues I've ever seen.
It really shows how each of them shine and bring such wonder and such amazing work into this issue. It's firing on all cylinders. Nobody is phoning it in. This is a great issue that really sticks in your mind and stays with you. You know, it's been over 10 years and we're still like, no. Which Christmas one are we doing? We're doing this one. We're doing this one.
Same for me 1,000%. And like, I think this gave us one of the most famous Daredevil memes of all time.
Oh, yes.
I'm not Daredevil. I'm not Daredevil is like one of the most famous Daredevil memes of all time.
Like, how is this not on every piece of merch that they have? Like
1,000%. Like, because when I think about Daredevil and I think about the fact that his, you know, my identity, Foggy, do you know who I am? Like that I think about that this is his narrative for the better part of his career, that we've talked about it so many times. You know, in the stories now, they're kind of doing something similar where they're trying to defeat his identity yet again, even in an amazing run like the Zdarsky. One of the things that really stands out is you either make fun of it or you lose the point.
Yeah.
And they're making fun of it in a way that's so sweet. Like, I'm Not Daredevil is a highlight of this character for me.
Oh, 100%. I think it's also the fact that so much of where we are in the 60s right now is people like looking at Matt going, oh, he's not Daredevil. And now we're at the point where he's like, I'm not Daredevil. And everyone's like, but you are.
But you are, Blanche.
Yeah, you are, but wink, wink. Okay, I guess you're not. Like, everyone's sort of playing into it, except for, you know, the Daily Bugle, whatever. They're all just like, yeah, that's Matt. He's Daredevil, but you know, to keep him on the happy place, we're all just gonna be like, yeah, no, you're not Daredevil. Hee. Oh no, which should I grab, the red or the white? Oh, you knew I wanted the red.
Yeah, it's one of those when, you know, eventually Neil Patrick Harris was like, oh, but so, I mean, I'm going to shock the world and tell everyone I'm gay, but I was never in the closet. It's one of those things every now and then when Matt's like, I'm Daredevil, everybody's like, sure, buddy. We were going to let you tell us. And other times he's like, hey, guys, I'm not Daredevil. And they're like, all right, that's what we're doing right now. Okay. But you are playing Mark in Rent, but you're not Daredevil. Got it.
Yeah. Oh, you're covered in glitter and feathers and mom's heels. And okay, sweetheart, whatever you need.
No one can convince me that Jaden Smith is still a heterosexual with that Insta post with the poppers on the table. I think the joke becomes how well the people in Daredevil's life have fun with this. Kirsten being like, oh, so you're not deaf. She's so sharp. It's difficult because like Daredevil is a character who has some unbelievable, breathtaking, unforgettable love interests. And so many of his love interests become so great they no longer fit in his book. Karen has time in Ghost Rider. Black Widow is so much more than Daredevil's love interest. Elektra is so much more than Daredevil's love interest. But then you've got Heather Glenn.
Heather.
So getting Kirsten, who is like queen motherfucker, like in a world of vitamin water, she's a full sugar Gatorade. And I really love her in this title. So getting to see her be part of this Christmas issue, this like spectacular moment in our memories, it does that thing where it permanently sneaks her into that moment. You know what I mean? There's that thing we have where we can kind of forget that somebody's not in as much as we think they are because they're in the right things.
Yes.
This is that for her.
Mm-hmm. I agree very much. I mean, I always talk about how I love Happy Matt and like Carefree Matt. And, you know, this party in comparison to the stark winter horror that comes. This is the best Matt that I could possibly ask for. And it's just such a joy to see him and to see someone who like gets him and plays along with him is just so wonderful for us to have as these tension breakers to allow time to slip forward in the snow. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful use of plotting.
And speaking of people that get things and a wonderful use of stuff, there's 2 lines of dialogue in this issue that I think are perfectly terrible because they're right. Even if they're not words I would have written, when I see them for Matt, I'm like, no, that's correct. The fart jokes in the beginning of the issue should be stupid, but that they play almost a beat role makes them a lot better. And when Matt spells hate, IHATE snow. First of all, it works for me because he said IHATE. So it's spelling, it's cute and playful. It also works for me because, speaking of Christmas, Mariah Carey has a song, HATEU. So if this line of dialogue is kind of like a perfect play to that, if Mark Waid is also a gigantic Mariah Carey fan, then call me. Mark, I'm here for it. We can have Chris Marks Wade's Miss. Hey, I backed that Irredeemable Kickstarter at like one of the highest tiers. Mark Waid, please call me. I love you so much. And I sort of feel like that line of dialogue reminds me of something that I forget. Some of my friends are like doctors and lawyers. I've got friends that are involved in like the actual like politicosphere. And I've got friends that have positions where they are in charge of like, seriously, like 4,000 employees. But then on weekends, I'm like, want to play some Splatoon? And they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's get splatty. Got any weed? And I'm like, sure, cool. And so like, it's easy to forget that people who we put in these stratospheric jobs, right? It's one of the reasons that I'm so glad I grew up in the era I did, just like silly, but like that President Bill Clinton played saxophone and that Barack Obama had a March Madness bracket. Those are things that humanize people in positions who do not otherwise seem human at times.
Yeah.
And the mundanity of who Matt Murdock is sometimes. Thank you for reminding me, Mark Waid, because I don't always remember it, and it's an important lesson.
Oh, yeah, 100%. If Matt Murdock is around kids, he's saying HE double hockey sticks. Like, that's who he is as a human. And I think it's something that we see a little bit more of in the 80s because of those little skateboard kids. But, I mean, Matt's not really around children very much. You know, so we don't get to see this dynamic. Good. Yeah, seriously. But we don't get to see him have, you know, a spunky sidekick who's 16 that he's trying to like semi-adopt and take under his daring wing. Like, we don't see that side of him. We don't see the nurturing or the mentoring as much. Whenever he's paired up with someone, it's usually a partner of equals, or at the most Ward, like it's Spider-Man, who is his own thing and perfectly capable of taking care of himself. It's more like a bros who care kind of situation. And so to see this here, to get to watch him try to care for these kids in an extreme circumstance is also very much in that spirit of community and Christmas that we all kind of want to gather around and keep each other close in the dark kind of thing.
Really, really, you know, and it's one of the reasons it's important that Foggy never became the Fog, or Karen never became the Page, or I don't know, Heather Glenn never transformed into an actual Heather Glenn.
No. He'd be the half Nelson.
And he'd be a buff wrestler. I love it. And Karen Page can be the other half of the Nelson, and together they can be the full Nelson.
She's the page turner, and it's a spell book or something.
Oh, this is hot. I want this
She's the new spellbinder.
Erica and Karen would have some amazing conversation. The X's for Podcast coverage of Spellbound by X Factor's Wheezy Simonson. It is to never be forgotten.
Unhinged is the word.
Unhinged. The magic of this book that always reminds me that Matt is a human is when he snaps at the kids. Oh, that's so hard, because as a teacher, for the years I taught in classrooms, I would literally like channel my energy into whatever I had to never lose my cool on students. The worst thing I felt I could do was make a student feel like the classroom wasn't their safe space. And that's with the benefit of walls, desks, I was always lucky enough to teach in school districts that had the sort of financial means to provide for the students in adequate ways. And there's so many school districts, especially, you know, around the holidays. I can't help but think of that as someone who continues to work in education, but is no longer a teacher. The schools that don't have adequate heat, that don't have proper insulation. So these kids are struggling at the holidays. I don't even face that kind of stuff. I have a cushy job, and I still think the most important thing is making these students feel safe. Matt is literally out in the wilderness, full on Bear Grylls man versus wild, kind of like out there. And there's these kids and they're frightened and they're honestly disabled. Matt is doing everything he can to manage all of this, but he's in pain. He's ailing. He's limping. And yeah, he's going to snap on these kids at some point. And then he does what he can, like a dad, to fix it. It's so important to see.
Yeah. Oh, now I'm thinking about Dad Daredevil. Oh, my ovaries.
Right? I'll be honest. I a little bit kind of think he'd make a great mom. But like, you know, I've
read that.
My man ovaries. He is just such a dynamic character that we see those flaws. And it's that perfect moment where he hears the car and he can't really talk about how he heard the car. These kids eventually, you know, they get him up and they drag him, not like reading drag, but like they're literally pulling him. And one of them must have touched the horns. I refuse to believe that none of these kids realized he was wearing like a leathery costume.
I mean, in fairness, why was he wearing I guess it's his only hat.
And it's insulated.
Yeah.
And like it'll keep his head warm, and he needs anything he can do to have his wits about him as best he can.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, maybe they just think he's super into cosplay. Mr. Murdoch just really loves Daredevil a lot. And so he's got a little winter Daredevil hat.
Especially with all of those Daredevil rumors. He just really wanted to really confuse people.
It's the only red suit he owns. How can he play Santa without it?
How can he play Santa without it? And then, much like Santa, when he gets into these people's houses, his first thought is to thank them and reward them for allowing him to break into their home. That his first thought is like, I call the police. I'm going to leave these people money. I'm going to explain what happened. This is a guy for whom he will do whatever it takes to make things right in every direction. And that's part of the pain of being Matt Murdock. He can't take from someone like that, even if it's to save kids' lives. It's really such a code of ethics he is bound by, to the point, yeah, exactly, as Kevo has up, I'll pay for the window and the food we devour. Devour. What a great word for Mark Waid to put in that script. Ellie Pyle was such a visionary editor for Daredevil. She really trusted this creative team and knew how to pull and push. This is just one of the best issues of this series ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also one of those things where I don't know if we're thinking about it as we're reading, but the fact that we're kind of aware that the bus driver didn't make it is enough of someone has already paid the price for this story that we're sort of pretty sure that like none of the kids are going to die. Yeah. Like that if Matt or if somebody succumbs, they're going to wake up in a hospital in the morning.
Yeah, like, exactly.
We don't think that this is going to end with like Matt in the snow cuddling a frozen child that's not going to make it. Like we don't have that hanging over us as much. We still have everyone might not like walk out of here, but we're not as concerned about extreme mortality.
Yeah, that's a really great point. They even have the kids be like, why did the bus driver leave us? And Matt is like, oh, this is tough. Don't want to tell them about death. Okay. And you're right. You know, I kept thinking they're not going to kill a kid after killing the bus driver. That was already them facing mortality. But your perspective of they might not all walk out of here. There could have been a moment where Matt doesn't forgive himself because this kid loses a foot to frostbite and he spends the rest of his life making sure to pay their medical bills.
Yep.
That's very Matt. The main complaint I have about this issue, I guess, is there's so little foggy for how much this is a very foggy heavy run, and
he needed a break. He was getting too much. He needed a break. The actor needed a nap.
Yeah. He was just like, guys, I can't make it to these panels. I'm sorry. I'm having like Debbie flashbacks. I gotta go.
Who is my emergency contact for this chemo?
Oh my God. What man, I can't wait to get into this run. Just another 400 issues to go.
We got it.
And the major conclusive point of this issue isn't really the stuff that follows, because there's that short arc that comes after this, which is lovely. But the main thing about this issue is that it's reminding us that the concerns of Daredevil are not just supervillains.
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil has always been a book bound by some scope of reality. Not exactly the scope of reality that like real people use, but a scope of reality that is defining of his experience as a superhero. When we think about Daredevil, we think about overcoming challenges and overcoming odds. And that's what this story really is.
Truly. I think one of the things that we talk about in Daredevil that we haven't gotten to yet in the 60s is the idea that it is always a double act.
Yeah.
There is a very big difference between a Daredevil story and a Matt Murdock story. And for all that he is in the suit this time, this is a Matt Murdock story. There is no point where the kids are like, Daredevil's here! Like, there's no point where he gets to, like, something comes out of the snow and he has to punch his way out of it. That doesn't happen. This is a Matt Murdock story through and through. And for me, as someone who sometimes struggles with the superhero genre, because in these issues it can be very Monster of the Week, there's not enough plot development, there's not enough character development to keep me hanging on. An issue like this can really hold me over for several issues afterwards of big action sequences, because it does so much to hold me over on the interpersonal play, on the internal conflicts, on the emotions and the remembrances and the echoes. For me, this is a huge issue that I would treasure deeply in a run.
And it's such a special issue because it's in a legendary run is part of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it manages to stand out. When you talk about standouts among a standout, that's so tough. You know what I mean? It's just so why we make this show is this idea of Daredevil's strength overcoming. And I don't think I've ever realized this before, but I kind of think Daredevil is a summer and winter book. And I'm like an autumn and spring guy. I'm also a very winter guy, but like I'm probably autumn, winter more than I'm anything. I love summer, but the things about autumn, like the season of autumn is where my heart is. The season of winter is where my heart is. It gets a little cold, but you know, it's kind of a balance, and Daredevil exists best in the coldest days of the darkest winter and the hottest, most acrid days of a New York City summer.
Yep.
But I don't know, fall is kind of Matt Murdock's time.
Yes, fall is definitely a Matt Murdock season. It's very much about putting the heat and the weight of the summer behind you and kind of taking a breath, cooling down a little, while also recognizing that it's going to be a very long time until you see the sun again. And I think that is very Matt Murdock. I think the time of renewal and warming days, that might be Matt Murdock cuffing season, but it's not really so much Matt Murdock. That's when you might start to feel like a spring issue is when he's courting someone, or it's a Foggy Nelson-centric kind of episode. Matt doesn't really resonate as much with renewal. I think his renewal is so revolutionary that it's not as evolutionary as we see spring be, at least here in the temperate zones of the New York City metro area.
So, that's probably what makes this issue stand out a little bit, because it's a Matt Murdock in winter story.
Yes.
Whereas Matt Murdock is usually fall. And I was just realizing I associate fall and spring stories with Matt falling in love with Elektra at school. So maybe Elektra is fall and spring in the balance to Daredevil's summer and winter, which then of course makes sense because the overlap of their identities is Matt and Elektra, not Elektra and Daredevil.
Yes.
Okay. You know, pretty good thesis.
Yeah, I think we can send that off to the professor and start getting some research materials together and really MLA this motherfucker.
You know, we started the show officially 7 months ago. We put up our first Amazing The Origin of Daredevil episode. And, you know, we didn't think we were going to do the like live TV stuff and the special we did for the cartoon that he's going to be in. There were some million things we didn't think we were going to do when we started the show. I didn't think I was going to get a chance to show off my awesome Deadpool cardigan, right? So here we are at the end of our first year. It's been really exciting. We've done like 25, 26 episodes.
Yeah.
And we're moving maybe faster and slower than I thought we would. Maybe with a little bit more awesome input from Kevo than I could have ever dreamt up.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Makes the show look so much cleaner. So
Truly
much better. Look at this
gift. He's the gift. He is the tree. He is the reason for the season.
He is, right? I'm just really grateful that we're doing this. I love this project, and it's just getting cooler. And I just want to say thanks for an amazing year of Daredevil.
Oh, I want to say thank you too. Thank you for originally dragging me into this like years ago now, and like saying like, no, you can read the comics, but first start with the Mark Waid issue, and then we'll get into the 60s. And I just really appreciate you. I really appreciate Kevo, and I appreciate everyone who's tuning in and watching this and making us feel like we should keep going and keep introducing you guys to some really excellent, interesting Daredevil content that sometimes makes us want to bang our head against a wall, but generally makes us want to swing through the buildings.
Makes us want to take out our billy club and just go Christmas a-caroling.
I think you can get arrested for that.
I think you can too. I think that's why they don't want you caroling in trench coats anymore. That's got to be a de Blasio ordinance.
Sorry, Christmas present. I know what's hiding under your robes.
Well, before this goes from Christmas presents to Christmas predators, Tori, where can everybody find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at smtori and on Twitter at Tori_Sheehan. And of course, you can find this whole podcast over at the Billy Club Pod all over your socials. Nico, where can they find you?
You guys can find me thoroughly ensconced in every video on this amazing network produced by our amazing producer and editor, Kevo, who does all of this fine work on the show. Kevo, if you want to wave hi real quick.
Happy holidays!
I just want to say a great big thank you to everybody. You can find the show, like Tori said, at the Billy Club Pod. You can find me at Nico Action. That's NicoAction everywhere as part of X's for Podcast and more. I also, personal note, thank you so much to all of the end of year lists, nominations, and blogs, vlogs, podcasts that are singing the praises of Young Men in Love for end of year stuff. It's unfucking real. I'm so freaked out. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. And huge shout out to everyone who made that possible. Thank you. And until next time, guys, there's only one thing to do.
Stay
fearless.
We got it. We get it. We got a trio
Triple
going.
play.
Yeah.
All right.
And to all, a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy holidays, everyone.
May you survive the blizzard.